Hey everyone, welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be talking about Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money. We've got a bunch of excerpts from his book, and we're going to be unearthing the best advice on how we interact with money. So get ready for some big realizations. This isn't just your typical finance lecture.
Yeah, it's definitely different. Housel really gets how people act, and that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah. So let's just jump right in. One of the things that really stood out to me was Housel saying that being good at math doesn't make you good with money. Like he talks about this tech millionaire who designed a key Wi-Fi thing, but then he did some crazy stuff with his money, like flashing cash and gambling. What do you think about that?
Oh yeah, that story is crazy. It shows that smarts don't always equal good money habits. I mean, this guy was a genius in tech, but the way he acted with money, like walking around with tons of $100 bills and pushing people to gamble, it was like he was trying to prove something.
Yeah. It makes you wonder about what was going on in his head.
Right. And that's exactly what Housel says about everyone having their own money story. Like, their background shapes how they see money. You know? He even mentions John F. Kennedy, who grew up rich but learned about the Great Depression from books. It shows that even big events hit everyone differently.
Totally. Someone who lived through crazy inflation might not trust saving money. But someone who grew up when things were good might think saving is everything. These beliefs stick with us.
So how do we figure out our own money story and start making better choices?
Housel says we got to think about our own story, like what shaped our views on money. It's about knowing what we assume and then questioning it. For example, if you're scared of risks, maybe it's because you saw your parents struggle during a recession. Once you realize that, you can start seeing risks differently and make choices that fit your life now, not your fears from the past.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like we're following a script without even knowing it. Exactly. And speaking of unseen forces, Housel talks about luck and risk in money matters. He compares Bill Gates to his smart friend Kent Evans, who died young. What did you think about that?
It made me realize that no matter how talented or hardworking you are, things outside your control can change everything. It's not about saying effort doesn't matter, but about understanding that luck plays a role.
Right. It's a big point. Acknowledging luck doesn't mean your achievements are less, but it helps you see things realistically. It stops you from being too proud or too upset about success and failure. What if Bill Gates died young? Would we be praising Ken Evans as a genius? It's impossible to know.
Yeah, it makes you think about how success isn't always about being the best,
Yeah,
right? There's a bit of randomness, being in the right place at the right time.
exactly. And that brings us to another idea. Enough. Housel talks about people like Rajat Gupta and Bernie Madoff. They had tons of money, but they always wanted more, which led to their downfall.
It's kind of sad, actually. It shows that always wanting more can be dangerous. But how do we figure out what enough is when everyone's talking about wealth and success?
That's the question, isn't it? Housel says we should focus on what makes us happy inside, not on what others think. Instead of comparing ourselves to others, we gotta ask, what really makes me happy? What kind of life do I want? And how much money do I need for that?
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
It's about matching our money goals with our values, not letting society tell us what to want.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
speaking of goals, Housel talks about Warren Buffett. He became super rich by investing for the long term. Even though his yearly returns weren't always the highest, his consistency over decades made him a legend.
That's something I think a lot of people struggle with. Compounding seems almost magical, right? It's like a snowball getting bigger as it rolls down a hill.
It does seem like magic. To show how powerful it is, Housel uses the example of a hard drive storage. Imagine being in the 1950s and predicting a 1,000-fold increase in storage. You'd be considered crazy. But the truth is, we have millions of times more storage now than anyone could have imagined back then.
Wow, that's amazing. So being patient and consistent along with compounding can really pay off.
Absolutely. And it's not just about investing. This applies to skills learning and even relationships. Small, consistent efforts over time lead to big results.
So it's all about playing the long game. But Housel also says that chasing the highest returns isn't always the best. Why is that?
Because it comes with a price. It can make you take big risks, feel stressed, and always feel like you don't have enough. Housel's being happy with good enough returns can be better than always wanting the absolute maximum.
So it's about finding a balance between growing your money and having peace of mind, right?
Yeah.
It's about knowing that sometimes a good night's sleep is more valuable than squeezing out every last penny.
You got it.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another cool concept. Housel calls it tails driving everything. It means that in investing and in life, a few big events or investments make the biggest difference.
I'm listening. Tell me more.
Think about blockbuster movies. Just a few hits make most of the money for a studio. Same with the stock market. A few big winners can cover a lot of small losses.
So are you saying that accepting small losses is okay, as long as you have a few big wins?
That's one way to look at it. But it's also about knowing that even successful companies can fail. Housel uses the example of Carolco, the studio that made Rambo and Terminator 2. They went bankrupt in the end.
Wow. So even in Hollywood, failure is more common than we think.
Yeah.
So how do we use this tails driving everything idea in our own money choices?
It helps us think bigger. Instead of just trying to avoid losses, we can focus on finding those big wins. It's about knowing that a portfolio with a few carefully chosen investments might do better than one that's spread out too thin.
So it's not about taking crazy risks,
Yeah.
but about doing your research and picking investments you believe in, and then being patient.
Exactly. And that connects to Hausel's point about being reasonable, not just rational. He tells the story of Julius Wagner Jauregg, who won a Nobel Prize for using fever therapy to treat syphilis. His methods were weird and some people thought they were dangerous, but they worked.
So you're saying that sometimes doing things differently can lead to the best results, that we shouldn't be afraid to go against the norm.
Right. In personal finance, this could mean choosing a strategy that lets you sleep at night, even if it's not the perfect strategy, according to the experts.
It's about finding a way that fits you and your values, not blindly following some formula.
Precisely. And speaking of fitting things together, Housel says there's a difference between being rich, which means having a high income, and being wealthy, which means having assets that give you freedom and choices.
I like that difference. And it reminds me of what Housel says about working these days. We're always connected and expected to be on all the time.
Yeah, it's a trap a lot of us fall into, feeling tied to our jobs, always chasing the next paycheck or promotion. But true wealth gives you a way out. You can say no to things you don't like. You can leave a job that makes you unhappy.
It's about having choices, having the security to design your own life, instead of being stuck in a rut.
Exactly. And that brings us to something Housel really emphasizes, the importance of saving. What do you think about that?
Housel says, savings is the gap between your ego and your income. That's so smart. It shows how humility and contentment help you build wealth.
It's a powerful image, right? It's about realizing that security doesn't come from keeping up with the Joneses or buying the latest gadgets. It comes from living within your means and having a safety net. It's about having the self-control to wait for the things you want and to make choices that help you reach your long-term goals.
It's like saving is a way to take care of yourself. It gives you security and stability, a foundation for a life of freedom and purpose.
Absolutely. And speaking of the dangers of spending too much, Housel talks about Rihanna. She almost went bankrupt even though she made a ton of money because she wasn't good with her finances. It shows that even super successful people can mess up if they don't save.
Yeah, it really shows that it's not just about how much you earn, but about how much you keep and how you manage it, right? Speaking of managing things, Housel makes a good point about comparing saving to saving energy.
It's a brilliant analogy. Just like we conserve energy to rely less on outside sources, saving money makes you less dependent on your income. It gives you a sense of independence and security.
It's about being in control, knowing you have a backup if things go wrong.
Exactly, and that feeling of control can be really powerful. It takes away the worry of living paycheck to paycheck and lets you make choices based on what you want, not on what you can afford.
It's about changing your mindset. From fear to abundance, from chasing every dollar to feeling secure and free to live a meaningful life. Speaking of changing mindsets, Housel's chapter on narratives is really interesting. He imagines an alien visiting Earth in 2007 and then again in 2009. Even though things are pretty similar, the economic outlook was totally different. Why do you think that is?
It's all about the stories we tell ourselves. In 2007, everyone thought the good times would never end. Housing prices were going up, and everyone thought they were financial geniuses. But by 2009, the story had changed. The financial crisis hit, and everyone was scared and unsure.
Yeah, it shows how powerful stories can be. They change how we see the world and how we act, even if the facts haven't really changed that much.
It's like we're all living in a big story, and the stories we choose to believe have a huge impact on our lives.
So how do we become better at understanding these stories, especially when it comes to the economy?
Housel says we need to think critically, to question what we hear, to look for evidence, and to get different perspectives. It's about understanding that there's no one right answer, that there are always different ways to see things.
So it's about being skeptical. Asking questions like, who's telling this story and what are they trying to get me to believe?
Exactly. It's about knowing that stories can be used to manipulate us. By thinking critically, we can make better choices that fit our own values and goals, instead of being swayed by what everyone else is saying.
Yeah, it's about taking charge of what we believe and choosing the stories that empower us. And speaking of choices, Housel's point about everyone having an incomplete view of the world really struck a chord with me.
That's a powerful concept. He uses the example of his young daughter, who's learning all the time but still doesn't understand everything about the world. He says we adults are kind of like that too.
You mean we think we know more than we actually do?
Exactly. We fill in the gaps in our knowledge with stories and assumptions. We create this illusion of understanding.
So we're making decisions without having all the facts.
A lot of times, yes. And this can make us overconfident, especially when it comes to investing where the stakes are high and the future is uncertain.
So it's a reminder to stay humble, to admit that we don't know everything, and to be open to new information and different points of view. And speaking of admitting when we're wrong, Housel talks about the trap of sunk costs.
Sunk costs are things you've already spent and can't get back. Like imagine you paid for a movie ticket but realize you hate the movie. Do you stay and suffer just because you paid for it?
Oh, I've totally done that. But how does this relate to money?
It can make us hold on to investments that are losing money just because we've already put time, money, or effort into them. It's like throwing good money after bad, hoping to get back what you've lost, instead of accepting reality and moving on.
So it's about knowing when to cut your losses, even if it means admitting you made a mistake.
Exactly. It's hard to let go, especially if you've invested a lot, but by holding on, you might be missing out on better opportunities.
It's about being flexible, being willing to change your mind, and not letting your past decisions control your future choices. Speaking of success and failure, Housel talks about General Electric. They were a huge company on the stock market, but then they had a decade of losses and went downhill. What's the lesson there?
Housel says that success can have hidden costs, like uncertainty, fear, and the pressure to keep doing well. It's like the saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
So even super successful companies can fail.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's the same for individual investors. Wanting high returns means taking bigger risks. It's about knowing that there are no guarantees that risk is part of the game, and that even the best investors lose money sometimes.
So it's about having realistic expectations, knowing that the market goes up and down, and being prepared for the rough times.
Exactly. And speaking of different market conditions, Housel makes an interesting point about how investors play different games with different goals and time frames. What do you think about that?
I think it's important to understand that what looks like a crazy price to one person might make sense to someone else. Housel uses the dot-com bubble as an example. Companies with no profits were trading at ridiculously high prices.
It was a wild time. People were excited and speculating. For long-term investors who cared about fundamentals, those prices were nuts. But for short-term traders who were riding the wave, they were chances to make quick money.
So the key is to know what game you're playing and not get distracted by what others are doing.
Exactly. It's about setting your own goals, your own risk tolerance, and your own time horizon, and then sticking to a plan that works for you.
It's about staying focused on your own path and not getting caught up in the hype or panic of others. Speaking of hype and panic, Housel talks about being a realistic optimist. What does he mean by that?
It means acknowledging the risks and challenges while still believing in your ability to overcome them and reach your goals. It's about balancing hope and caution.
So it's about being hopeful but not naive. About knowing that the future is uncertain but also full of possibilities.
Exactly. And it's about understanding that being too pessimistic can be just as bad as being too optimistic. While it's good to know the risks, being too negative can make you miss opportunities and prevent you from growing.
So it's about finding that balance between cautious optimism and smart risk-taking, knowing that growth often means stepping outside your comfort zone.
Precisely. And speaking of comfort zones, Housel emphasizes how important it is to manage your ego when it comes to money. How do you think our ego affects our financial decisions?
I think our ego can make us do things for show rather than for smart financial reasons. It can tempt us to buy things we don't need to spend too much and to take big risks just to impress other people.
It's that keeping up with the Joneses thing, trying to look rich and successful, even if it means hurting your finances.
Exactly. And I love what Housel says about real wealth being invisible. It's not about the fancy car or the expensive watch. It's about the freedom and choices you have because you live within your means and invest wisely.
It's about building a solid foundation, having the security to pursue your passions, take care of your family, and make a difference in the world.
It's about making sure your money choices match your values, not letting your ego call the shots.
Exactly. And that brings us back to a really important point. Saving money, it's about creating a safety net so you're not always stressed about bills.
Exactly. It's about feeling in control, knowing you have backup if things get tough. And it's about building financial freedom so you can pursue your passions, take care of your loved ones, and give back to your community.
It's about making sure money works for you, not the other way around.
Exactly.
And it's about understanding that everyone's financial journey is different. What works for one person might not work for someone else.
So true. We
Right.
all have different dreams, different things we care about, and different ways of doing things.
Exactly. Housel wants us to try things out, test different strategies, and learn as we go. He says the best plan is the one that works for you, even if it's not what the experts say.
Yeah, it's about finding what feels right for you, what fits your values and goals, and your vision for the future.
Exactly. And it's about being willing to change things up, to adapt your plan as you learn and grow, because the world of money is always changing.
It's about always learning, staying curious, and being open to new information and different ways of thinking.
Exactly. And one thing Housel warns us about is procrastination. It can really stop us from reaching our goals.
Procrastination is definitely a problem. How do we stop putting things off and start working towards our money goals?
Housel says to break big goals into smaller steps. He says the hardest part is just starting. Once you take that first step, it gets easier and you build momentum.
Yeah, it's about making that first commitment, even if it's small, and then building from there.
Exactly. And it's about knowing that small, consistent actions over time lead to big results, like that compounding effect we talked about. It works everywhere, not just in investing.
It's about showing up every day,
Yeah.
even when you don't feel like it, knowing that those little efforts will add up to something big.
Exactly. It's about knowing that you have the power to change your financial life, not by waiting for the perfect time, but by taking action today, even if it's just a small step.
I like that. It's about realizing we're not just watching our finances happen, we're actively creating our future.
Exactly. And speaking of the future, one of the things Housel talks about is how easy it is to get caught up in the hype, especially with new technology or investment trends.
Oh yeah, I've been there.
Uh,
It's easy to get swept up in the excitement, to think this time it's different, and to throw caution to the wind.
It's that fear of missing out, right? Feeling like everyone else is getting rich while you're standing still.
Exactly. But as Housel says, that's when our emotions can trick us. We make impulsive decisions that we regret later.
He's right. It's important to have a clear plan for investing, one that's based on logic, not feelings.
So it's about having some rules to follow. No matter what the market is doing or what other people are saying.
You got it. It's about deciding on your goals, how much risk you're comfortable with, and how long you want to invest for, and then making choices that fit those things.
So have a plan and stick to it. Don't get distracted by the latest fads or hot tips. But what about when things don't go as planned? What about losing money? It's part of investing, isn't it?
It is. And Housel knows that. He says we should see losing money not as a failure, but as a chance to learn. He says it's important to think long term, to remember that the market goes up and down, and that even the best investors have bad times.
Yeah, it's about knowing that the market always bounces back, and that if you can handle the tough times, you'll usually come out ahead.
Exactly. It's about believing that the market will generally go up over time while being ready for the rough patches along the way.
It's like riding a roller coaster.
Mm.
There will be ups and downs,
Yeah.
but if you focus on the end of the ride, you'll get there eventually.
I like that analogy. And speaking of those ups and downs, Housel talks about the power of thinking differently. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's really interesting. It's about not following the crowd, questioning what everyone else believes, and seeing opportunities where others see danger.
You mean like buying when everyone else is selling and selling when everyone else is buying?
Exactly. But that takes guts, doesn't it? To go against the flow and trust your own judgment.
It does. Thinking differently takes courage, discipline, and a willingness to stand out. But it can be really rewarding if you can do it right.
It's about thinking for yourself, not just following the herd. But how do you know when to think differently and when to go with the crowd?
That's where experience and careful thinking come in. It's about understanding how markets work, recognizing when people are too optimistic or too pessimistic, and seeing opportunities that most people miss.
Sounds like it takes a deep understanding of how markets and people work.
Exactly. It's about understanding how fear and greed drive the market and using those swings to your advantage.
It's amazing how emotions can create both opportunities and risks in the market.
It is. And speaking of managing risk, Housel also talks about diversification. What do you think about that?
I think diversification is like building a strong foundation for a house. The more spread out the foundation is, the more stable the house will be.
That's a great way to put it. Diversification means putting your money in different types of investments, different industries, and different parts of the world. It's like not putting all your eggs in one basket.
So if one investment does badly, it won't ruin your whole portfolio.
Right, exactly. Diversification helps to smooth out your returns, makes things less bumpy overall.
So it's like having a safety net. a cushion to soften the blow when the market throws a curveball.
You got it. But diversification isn't just about avoiding risk. It's also about finding opportunities. By investing in different things, you can benefit from growth in different parts of the economy.
So it's about balancing risk and potential reward.
Exactly. And speaking of maximizing returns, Housel talks about leverage, which can be a helpful tool for investors who know how to use it.
I've heard of leverage, but I'm not sure I understand it. Can you explain it?
Leverage means using borrowed money to increase your returns. It's like using a lever to lift something heavy. You can control a bigger investment with less of your own money.
So it's a way to potentially make more money.
Exactly. But remember, leverage also makes your losses bigger. So it's a risky tool that you need to use carefully.
Sounds like leverage can be powerful, but also dangerous.
You're right. Leverage can be great for experienced investors, but it can be really bad if you're not careful.
It's like driving a fast car.
Yeah,
It can be fun, but if you don't know what you're doing, you can crash.
exactly. Now let's talk about something that's often forgotten when people are chasing financial success. Giving back. What are your thoughts on that?
I think giving back is really important. It's about realizing that we're not just trying to get rich for ourselves, but that we're part of a community and we have a responsibility to help others.
I agree. Housel says that generosity can be a good way to combat greed. When you focus on helping others, it changes your perspective from scarcity to abundance.
It's about making sure your money choices match your values, using your resources to support causes you believe in, and making a difference in the world.
Exactly. And Housel reminds us that we can't control everything that happens in the market or in life.
That's for sure. Unexpected things happen all the time. Even the best plans can get messed up. How do we prepare for that?
Housel says to have a plan but be ready to change it. He says unexpected things will happen and we need to be flexible.
It's like the saying, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry.
Right. We can't control everything, but we can control how we react.
So it's about being adaptable, being open to new information and opportunities, and being willing to change direction when you need to.
Precisely. And speaking of long-term thinking, Housel really emphasizes its importance.
It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day ups and downs of the market and lose sight of the bigger picture.
Exactly. Housel says the biggest rewards go to those who are patient, who are willing to wait, and who can see beyond the immediate future.
It's about playing the long game, investing in your future self, and trusting that consistent effort will pay off.
Exactly. It's about knowing that building wealth takes time. And it's also about that compounding effect we talked about. Small, consistent efforts can grow into something big over time.
It's like planting seeds and taking care of them. You know, that if you're patient and consistent, they'll eventually grow into something beautiful.
Exactly. But sometimes fear gets in the way of those long-term goals, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Fear can stop us from taking action and make us miss opportunities. So how do we overcome fear, especially when the market is uncertain?
Housel says we need to educate ourselves, understand what risk really is, and make a plan that fits our comfort level and our goals.
So it's about facing our fears, not letting them control us.
Exactly. And remember, fear is often based on things that aren't true. The reality of risk is often much less scary than what we imagine.
It's about separating fact from fiction, challenging our negative thoughts, and focusing on what we can actually control.
Precisely. And speaking of control, Housel talks about how important discipline is with money.
Discipline is hard, especially when there are so many temptations and we want things right now. So how do we get better at financial discipline?
Housel says to make a budget, track your spending, and make deliberate choices about how you use your money.
It's about living within your means, not spending more than you earn and not getting into debt you can't handle.
Exactly. And it's about knowing that small, consistent acts of discipline can lead to amazing results. It's not about depriving yourself. It's about making smart choices that match your values and goals.
It's about creating a healthy relationship with money, one that supports your well-being in the long run.
Precisely. And speaking of healthy relationships, Housel also talks about finding balance in our financial lives.
Balance is so important. It's about finding that sweet spot between saving and spending, between taking risks and staying safe, between working hard and enjoying life.
You're right. Housel wants us to think about what's really important to us and make choices that fit those values. He says money is a tool, and we can use it to improve our lives or make them worse.
It's about making choices that feel right, not just spending without thinking or chasing money for the sake of it.
Exactly. And it's about knowing that our money choices affect other people. The way we spend, save, and invest can impact our communities, the environment, and future generations.
It's about using our money to make the world a better place, a world that reflects our values and dreams.
Exactly. And sometimes making the world a better place means stepping outside our comfort zone and trying new things.
Speaking of trying new things, Housel also talks about the importance of having a clear vision for our financial future.
Vision is so powerful. It's about seeing past today, imagining the future you want, and using that as a guide for what you do.
It's about dreaming big, thinking creatively, and believing that anything is possible.
You got it. And remember, your vision can change as you learn and grow. The important thing is to be open to new possibilities, to be willing to change direction, and to trust that your vision will lead you to a good place.
It's about believing in yourself, your dreams, and your ability to create the future you want.
Exactly. And speaking of the future, one of the things Housel talks about is how to handle uncertainty when it comes to money. The market goes up and down, and those changes can be scary, even for experienced investors.
So true. So how do we stay calm, stick to our plan, and avoid making emotional decisions when things get crazy?
Housel says it's all about having a clear set of beliefs about investing, one that's based on facts and logic, not your gut feeling. He reminds us that the market is unpredictable, that things will go up and down, and that the best way to handle that is to stay calm, focus on your goals, and not get emotional.
It's about remembering why you're investing in the first place, believing that the market will generally go up over time, and avoiding the temptation to chase quick profits or freak out when things go down.
Exactly. And remember, the market often overreacts to good and bad news. Those who stay calm and ride out the storm usually come out on top.
It's about being brave enough to be patient, to trust the process, and to believe that with time, your investments will grow.
Exactly. But with so much information and opinions flying around, it can be tough to focus on what's important.
Totally. It's like being flooded with financial noise. So how do we tune it out, focus on what matters, and make decisions based on facts, not hype?
Housel says to become a critical thinker. Question what you hear. Look for proof and get different perspectives. He says there's no secret formula for success. It's about doing your own research, understanding the risks, and developing a strategy that fits your goals and your personality.
It's about being smart, not believing everything you hear, and taking the time to learn and develop your own way of investing.
Exactly. And remember, the market is driven by emotions. Fear and greed can make prices go up and down for no good reason. The best way to handle that is to stay calm, focused, and disciplined.
It's about being the steady one in the storm, staying grounded when everything is crazy, and making choices based on logic, not feelings.
Exactly. And sometimes the best way to stay grounded is to keep things simple.
Speaking of simplicity, how can we make our financial lives easier and more fulfilling?
Housel says simplicity brings clarity. It helps you make decisions and focus on what's important. He says to simplify your finances by cutting unnecessary spending, automating your savings and investments, and creating a financial plan that's easy to understand and follow.
So it's about making your financial life easier, creating a system that works for you, and spending less time and energy worrying about money.
Exactly. And it's about realizing that true wealth isn't about having a lot of stuff. It's about having the freedom and flexibility to live a life you love.
It's about creating a life that feels good and has meaning. It's about not being stressed about money, but having the power to follow your dreams and make a difference.
Exactly. And speaking of making a difference, Housel talks about how our financial choices have a ripple effect.
It's true. The way we spend, save, and invest can impact our communities, the environment, and future generations.
It's a good reminder that our choices matter, that we should use our resources wisely and ethically.
It's about knowing that real wealth isn't just about money. It's about living a life with purpose, using our resources to make a positive impact on the world.
Exactly. And that might mean stepping outside our comfort zone, trying new things, and having the courage to chase our dreams even when we're scared.
Speaking of chasing dreams and facing fears, Housel talks about the importance of having a clear vision for our financial future.
Vision is powerful. It's about seeing past today, imagining the future you want, and using that as a guide.
Exactly. Housel wants us to think about what's important to us to define what success means and to create a clear picture of the future we want.
It's about dreaming big, thinking outside the box, and believing anything is possible.
You're right. And our vision can change as we learn and grow. The important thing is to be open to new possibilities. Be ready to change direction and trust that your vision will lead you to a good place.
Exactly. It's about believing in yourself, your dreams, and your power to create the future you want.
And speaking of navigating the unknown, Housel talks about dealing with the ups and downs of the market.
Yeah.
It can be tough even for people who've been investing for a long time.
It can. And Housel says it's all about having a clear set of beliefs about investing, one that's based on logic, not emotions. He says the market is unpredictable, Things will always change, and the best way to handle that is to stay calm, focus on your goals, and not get swept up in the moment.
It's about remembering why you started investing, believing that over time the market generally goes up,
Yeah,
and not freaking out when things go down.
exactly. And remember, the market often overreacts to news, whether it's good or bad. Those who stay calm and ride it out usually do the best.
It's about being brave enough to be patient,
Yeah,
to trust the process, and
that
to believe that with time your investments will grow.
exactly. But with so much information and so many opinions out there, it can be hard to know what's important.
Absolutely. We're bombarded with information, opinions, predictions. It's overwhelming. So how do we filter out the noise, focus on what matters, and make decisions based on facts, not hype?
Housel says we need to develop our critical thinking skills. Question what we hear. Look for evidence. Get different perspectives. He reminds us that there's no magic formula. The key is to do your own research, understand the risks, and come up with a plan that fits our goals and who we are.
It's about being smart, not
Yeah.
believing everything we hear, and taking the time to learn and figure out our own way of investing.
Exactly. And remember, the market is driven by emotions. Fear and greed can make prices go crazy. The best way to deal with that is to stay calm, focused, and disciplined.
It's about being the calm in the storm, grounded when everything's going haywire, making choices based on logic, not gut feelings.
Exactly. And sometimes the best way to stay grounded is to keep things simple.
Speaking of simplicity, how do we create a financial life that feels manageable and good?
Housel says simplicity helps you think clearly. It reduces stress and lets you focus on what matters. He says to simplify your finances by cutting unnecessary spending, automating your savings and investments, and making a plan that's easy to understand and follow.
So it's about streamlining your finances, creating a system that works for you, and spending less time and energy worrying about money.
Exactly. And it's about realizing that true wealth isn't about having tons of stuff. It's about having the freedom to live the life you want.
It's about creating a life that feels good and has meaning. Not being weighed down by money worries, but having the power to chase your dreams and make a difference.
Exactly. And speaking of making a difference, Housel says it's important to remember that our financial choices affect other people.
That's so true. How we spend, save, and invest can affect our communities, the environment, and the people who come after us.
Exactly. It's a reminder that our choices have power. We should use our resources wisely and do what's right.
It's about realizing that real wealth isn't just about money. It's about living a meaningful life, using our resources to make the world a better place.
Precisely. And sometimes making the world better means stepping outside our comfort zone, trying new things, and being brave enough to go after our dreams even when it's scary.
Speaking of being brave and chasing dreams, Housel talks about how important it is to have a clear vision for our financial future.
Having a vision is so powerful. It's about seeing past today, imagining the life you want, and using that as a guide.
Absolutely. Housel wants us to think about what we value, what success means to us, and to create a clear picture of the future we want.
It's about dreaming big, thinking outside the box, and believing that we can achieve anything.
Exactly. And that vision can change as we learn and grow. The key is to be open to new possibilities, be willing to change direction, and trust that our vision will guide us to a good place.
You got it. It's about believing in yourself, your dreams, and your ability to create the future you want. You're right. It's about recognizing that even small, consistent efforts add up over time.
It's about putting in the work even when it's tough, knowing that those small steps will eventually lead to something great.
You got it. And sometimes it takes courage to take that first step, to break free from inertia and start moving towards your goals.
Speaking of courage, Housel talks about the power of having a clear vision for your financial future.
Vision is powerful. It's about looking beyond today and imagining the future you want to create. Using that vision to guide your actions.
It's about dreaming big, thinking outside the box, and allowing yourself to believe that anything is possible.
Exactly. And remember, your vision can evolve as you learn and grow. The important thing is to be open to new possibilities. Be willing to adjust your course and trust that your vision will lead you to a fulfilling life.
It's about believing in yourself, in your dreams, and in your ability to create the future you desire.
Exactly. And speaking of navigating the unknown, Housel talks about dealing with market volatility. The market goes up and down, and those changes can be unsettling even for experienced investors.
Absolutely. So how do we stay calm, stick to our plan, and avoid making emotional decisions when the market gets rough?
Housel emphasizes the importance of having a clear investment philosophy, one that's based on solid principles, not on emotions. He reminds us that the market is unpredictable by nature, that short-term fluctuations are inevitable, and that the best way to navigate those rough waters is to stay calm, focused, and disciplined.
It's about remembering why you're investing in the first place, believing that over time the market will generally go up, and resisting the urge to chase quick profits or panic when the market dips.
Exactly. And remember, the market often overreacts to news, both good and bad. The people who stay calm and weather the storm often reap the biggest rewards.
It's about being brave enough to be patient, to trust the process, and to believe that with time, your investments will grow.
Exactly. But even with patience and discipline, it can be challenging to stay focused with all the information and opinions out there.
Absolutely. It's like we're drowning in a sea of financial noise. So how do we filter out that noise, concentrate on what's important, and make decisions based on solid principles instead of hype or speculation?
Housel encourages us to hone our critical thinking skills. We need to question assumptions, look for evidence, and seek out different viewpoints. He reminds us there's no magic formula for success. It all boils down to doing your own research, understanding the risks, and creating a strategy that fits your goals and your personality.
It's about being discerning, about not believing everything you hear, and about taking the time to educate yourself and develop your own investment philosophy.
Exactly. And remember, the market is heavily influenced by emotions. Fear and greed can cause prices to swing wildly. The key to navigating this is to remain calm, focused, and disciplined.
It's about being the eye of the storm, staying grounded when everything else is chaotic, making choices based on sound reasoning, not impulsive feelings.
Precisely. And often the most effective approach is the simplest one.
Speaking of simplicity, how do we design a financial life that feels manageable and truly satisfying?
Housel believes simplicity brings clarity. It can help us reduce decision fatigue and zero in on what truly matters. He encourages us to simplify our finances by cutting out unnecessary spending, automating our savings and investments, and creating a financial plan that's easy to grasp and follow.
So it's about streamlining our financial lives, building a system that works for us, and freeing up mental and emotional energy that we'd normally spend worrying about money.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that true wealth isn't about accumulating possessions, but about having the freedom and flexibility to live a life aligned with our values and passions.
It's about creating a life that feels rich and meaningful. It's about not being bogged down by financial stress, but feeling empowered to pursue our dreams and make a positive impact on the world.
Precisely. And speaking of making a positive impact, Howes highlights that our financial decisions have a ripple effect. The way we spend, save, and invest can impact our communities, the environment, and the generations that come after us.
It's a great reminder that our choices have consequences, that we have a responsibility to use our resources thoughtfully and ethically.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that true wealth isn't just about accumulating money, but about living a life of purpose and meaning a life where we use our resources to make the world a better place.
It's about making sure our financial decisions reflect our values, not just maximizing our returns, but building a legacy that represents our beliefs and aspirations.
Precisely. And sometimes building that legacy means pushing ourselves beyond our comfort zones, embracing the unknown, and having the courage to chase our dreams even when fear creeps in.
It's about trusting our gut, being open to new experiences, and having the confidence to build a life that aligns with our vision, even if it means venturing off the beaten path.
Exactly. And remember, you don't have to do it alone. A strong support system can make all the difference.
Having people in our corner who believe in us, who push us to grow, and who are there for us through thick and thin, that's invaluable.
Absolutely. Housel stresses the importance of seeking diverse perspectives, finding people who challenge our assumptions and encourage us to think critically. He reminds us that we're not in this alone, that there are resources and people available to help us make informed decisions and reach our financial goals.
It's about building a network of support, surrounding ourselves with people who share our values and are invested in our success.
Exactly. And remember, everyone's financial journey is unique. What works for one person may not work for another. The key is to find a path that feels authentic and sustainable for you, one that aligns with your values, goals, and vision for the future.
It's about being open to trying new things, learning from our experiences, and constantly adapting as we grow and change.
Precisely. Personal finance is an ongoing journey. It's about continuous learning, growth, and adaptation. It's about understanding the intricacies of money and the human mind and using that knowledge to create a life filled with purpose, meaning, and financial well-being.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the psychology of money, I'm curious to know what stands out to you the most. What's the key takeaway for our listeners?
I think Housel's most important message is that financial success is about more than just numbers. It's about understanding ourselves, our biases, our fears, and our dreams. It's about realizing that money is simply a tool and that how we use it can either improve or diminish our overall happiness. It's about aligning our financial choices with our values, creating a life of meaning and purpose, and utilizing our resources to make a positive impact on the world.
That's a great point.
Mm.
It's about understanding that money isn't the ultimate goal, but a way to achieve something bigger.
Right.
It's about using our financial resources to build a life that is both fulfilling and abundant, where we're not only financially secure, but also emotionally content and aligned with our values.
Exactly. And I think Housel leaves us with a thought-provoking question. What if we stopped thinking of the economy as a cold, impersonal machine and started seeing it as a reflection of our collective psychology, our shared beliefs, and our hopes and anxieties for the future?
That's a really interesting way to look at it. So you're suggesting that the economy isn't just about statistics and numbers, but also about human emotions, behaviors, and the stories we tell ourselves about the world.
Precisely. The economy isn't some abstract force. It's a collection of individuals making choices, taking risks, and pursuing their aspirations. And if we can understand the psychology behind those choices, we can gain a deeper understanding of how the economy functions and how we can build a more prosperous, equitable, and sustainable future for ourselves and for future generations.
That's a powerful message to leave our listeners with. So as we conclude our exploration of the psychology of money, I encourage you to reflect on your own relationship with money, to examine the beliefs you hold about wealth and success, and to make choices that align with your values and your vision for a fulfilling life. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.